if someone gave me a few million and said make Surf Ninjas 2, I wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't say like, oh no, I need to invest in a property in Hampstead. I'll be like, no, I'll happily make Surf Ninjas 2. Get, like you say, get Rob Schneider, Adam Sandler. Oh no, he's in a Netflix contract these days.
Donald Trump cameo.
Donald DT cameo, yeah. Smith loves films where Donald Trump turns
This is
up.
on gold that's never
I
been
know.
Yeah.
I know, it can't.
In my mind, I'm trying to find the soundbite somewhere. Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast?
Or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. I'll say there's loads of Johns.
I can't think of any now, though.
I can't think of any, apart from John Rambo, which is such a weird name when you think. But anyway.
I thought they should have called him Ralph Rambo.
Ralph Rambo.
I'll make myself laugh.
Yeah, like the alliteration.
I couldn't resist.
Connor Carter.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Clint Carter. Right. Hello. Welcome back. I'm James Smith.
Oh, sorry.
And joining me, as always, is James Eatock.
Hello.
Eatock, what rhymes with no alliteration?
No. Sock Eatock? There you go.
Eatock. Ernest Eatock.
No, I used to get called Ewok. That was always the funny thing. Everybody goes, Ewok. Oh, you must have got rinsed at school. And I was like, I went to an all boys school where bullying was rife, and my nickname throughout was Ewok. It always was. Like that was.
Well, that's not that.
No, there wasn't even an insult. It became my name because there were two Jameses in our group. So one was Farmer and I was Ewok, and it's just like, why couldn't I just been called James if he's being called Farmer? He was actually a farmer. That's the thing.
And we call him Eatock. And Neil Brock.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Hello.
What the hell was that?
I do not understand that. Is that related
he'll tell
to
us
this
that
film
reference
that I've missed?
eventually.
It is. It's basically our good friend Taylor Kitsch, who's a star of this film, got his breakthrough in the TV show, the wonderful TV show, Friday Night Lights.
Oh,
and
right.
That is a very famous quote from that show.
Ah, I see.
A famous quote if you've seen the show,
I
I presume, right?
I think it's seeped into popular culture. So
oh, really?
You two are just...
Not popular.
We just don't.
Or culture.
Yeah. You're just Ewok and L. Smith.
L. Smith.
L. Smitho. Okay, yeah, and that's Nige. And yeah, today, as we may have alluded to, we are reviewing John Carter, which came out in 2012, recommended by Andrew Harwood Mills.
Yeah.
So someone you know.
One of my I guess crew in the He-Man and She-Ra community represented.
Nice.
No, he just
He
reached out and he said, he just said, would you like to? Big fan of the podcast. I said, would you like to review this film?
Oh,
and I was like, okay. So yeah,
hates the podcast. Just wanted to
just wants us to give it.
I hate your podcast.
Your podcast sucks balls. Say my name. Okay. So
had you guys heard of this film before?
Oh, heard of it? Yes. Seen it? No.
Yeah. Nige?
I tried to watch it. It was on like Film 4, I think, or something like that. And I just saw it was on, and like Eatock, I'd obviously heard about it. Big fan of Taylor Kitsch, and I thought, yeah, I'll check it out. And I think I watched like half an hour, and then I think I just got distracted and did something else and thought, I'll have to come back to that one of these days. And never did until we obviously were tasked with watching it for this podcast.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I've really heard of it. It was weird because I'm sure I probably would have at the time, but like many people, it's, I've totally forgotten about it. So yeah, I hadn't seen it before and barely knew of its existence. And directed and written by Andrew Stanton, who we spoke about on our Wall-E episode.
Wall-E.
Who he's written, a lot of Pixar Disney films. So wrote a story for Toy Story films, Bug's Life, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, Dory. And then he also wrote the 2 episodes of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And he's directed a whole host of kind of Disney Pixar films as well.
Oh, and he didn't write this per se, though, did he? He adapted it from Edgar Rice Burroughs' original book.
Yeah, so he wrote the screenplay adapted from the book. But that's a good point. Obviously, a book, right?
It's kind of like he wrote like Tarzan as well, the same guy, and it was almost like those. He did it in such a way that he did some things that were almost like, what do they call it? Almost like comic books, but not comic books.
Pulp.
Those kind of pulp type style things.
Like your Flash Gordons, your Prince Valiants, your... it was in that vein. Like Tarzan, Prince Valiant, Flash Gordon, John Carter. They're all kind of that pulp hero, comic strip, comic book from a time now gone. But it was very much
it was written in like 1912, and it was part of a series of books called like the Barsoom series. And I think there's probably quite a lot of popular culture type films, fantasy films, Star Wars that owe a lot to this kind of this book essentially. And for many years they've been trying to adapt a movie out of it, and lo and behold, finally Disney put forward the cash and got an animator / director to put this together.
With a huge budget, this film as well, I guess. I know it treading on trivia straight away, but it was like, what was it, like close to 300 million or something budget. So,
and one of, if not the biggest box office bomb, certainly of recent memory.
Yeah, that's literally. If you said, "What do you know about John Carter?" I was like, "Oh, that's the film that bombed at the box office." It was one of those. It's one of the earliest ones that I recall supposedly being the springboard for a new franchise, and then just not going anywhere beyond the first film because it did so bad. But they were planning on making, from what I remember, like 2 or 3 movies and beyond, and like probably, this was a time when the Marvel Cinematic Universe was kind of finding its feet, as it were. So I can imagine that they were, when did this come out? 2012?
2012. So, also, Avatar was only 2-3 years before, and that was a massive hit and, of a similar kind of vein
not in our thing. It was a massive hit with the word S in front of it.
This film came out in 2009.
Oh, okay. There you go. I thought...
The Princess of Mars, the direct-to-DVD film made by an independent studio, starring none other than Antonio Sabato Jr. and Tracy Lords.
Oh, Tracy Lords.
What?
Yeah, wow.
Yes.
So I don't know where I got 2012 from. I think because Nige said...
No, it says
No,
2012.
This is another film entirely that basically also was adapted from the Princess of Mars movies that came out 3 years earlier.
Oh, I see.
It's really DVD.
I thought we'd got like really royally
But you all went and watched that, right? Didn't you?
Oh, no.
That's what we're talking about.
You've done the wrong film again.
Tracy Lords. Blimey.
The old
I've heard of her.
I've seen her work. I've admired it.
We're reviewing her next week.
Yeah, so look forward to our new podcast. The only thing I knew about this movie was that it was like this massive bomb. But, and I want to say this because I think this would tie into my review at the end, I guess, to some degree. A lot of people that I know that like, I'm not even going to say fantasy films, but like I'm not even going to say He-Man and She-Ra. I'm going to say fantasy movies like He-Man and She-Ra, Lord of the Rings, all that kind of thing. A lot of those people really enjoyed this movie, and you can see why, like, the fantasy element, the sci-fi element, all that business.
Absolutely.
So I went into it thinking I should like this. So that was my
and as Nige, before we start getting there, I guess, as Nige said, stars
Tracy Lords.
Taylor Kitsch.
I don't know this guy. What? I've never heard of this guy.
I had no idea who he was.
Who?
Apart from, I looked up his thing, and he was in X-Men Wolverine, which I've not seen.
Yeah. Who was he in that?
I don't know.
Gambit.
No.
Lightning.
He was Gambit.
Oh wow, I did not know that. Well,
he also he did a couple of terrible films. He did, was it Battleships with Rihanna in it?
Oh God,
he did that. Only the Brave, like the firefighting film. And I swear, after Friday Night Lights, a really, really famous director kind of picked him up and said, "Yeah, you're going to be the next kind of big star."
Oh, no.
Cast him in something. And he did 21 Bridges as well. I'm trying to find the film.
Friday Night Lights is before this film, is it?
Yeah. So this, he was basically cast as an extra for Friday Night Lights, and in the first episode, he was so good and so charismatic. They were like, maybe we should give this guy a few more lines, and then that grew into him becoming one of the kind of mainstays in it. The director was Oliver Stone as well, who cast him in Savages in 2012, so it was around this sort of time. He was a huge, he was the hottest Hollywood property at the time of this film.
I've never heard of it.
Such a small window. It's such a small window, and obviously got decimated by the.
I was going to say, if you go into a pub and ask 10 people, I bet most of them don't know who this guy is right now. Anyway, but yeah, unless you've seen Friday Night Lights, he was also in Painkiller, which was a series about. A recent series about the OxyContin thing.
Oh, the OxyContin thing, yeah.
And there were two at once, and I watched the Dope Sick one with Michael Keaton.
I did,
which was very good, but I haven't seen Painkiller. But I think it's pretty much one of those, things that comes out at the same time as each other.
Yeah. The thing with Taylor Kitsch and kind of what he was originally kind of known for is playing this very... he was also in Snakes on a Plane. Very sort of classically Texan, American, good-looking, big kind of guy. As I mentioned, charismatic. But whether or not he does that in this film is obviously another thing entirely. So we can get onto that.
And then also Lynn Collins, who plays, she's like the kind of princess in this, also in Wolverine, weirdly. And the Number 23. Do you remember that Jim Carrey film?
I watched that. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in that.
I saw that in the cinema, Number 23. Wow. She was in that?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you who she was in that, but 14 episodes of The Walking Dead. So, yeah. But then...
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it depends what series you watch, probably, but anything after the second or third, probably a bad thing. Dominic West...
the bloke from the bank adverts, right?
I think he's better known from The Wire.
Probably.
I've never seen The Wire. I've seen the bank adverts.
Affair,
the Queen.
Bank adverts. He's been in loads, hasn't he?
Of bank adverts, there's about 3 or 4 now.
Yeah, the recent bank adverts is what he's most known for.
That's like saying Rowan Atkinson's from the bank adverts.
He is. He was in Shubbly Duck Duck. How much is the rug? He was in... What?
Yeah, but he was also Mr. Bean.
And Black. Yeah, forgettable roles.
Anyway.
Mark Strong, Thomas Hayden Church, The Voice, which I didn't notice until halfway through the film. I don't know if you guys probably did. Willem Dafoe.
No, I didn't get that.
Willem Dafoe,
green guy,
one of the aliens. He signed up for this because he'd always wanted to act in a film where he got to be on stilts and wear his pajamas, apparently, and that's what he had to do for this role. So it wasn't just his voice; he also danced around.
Well, he did motion capture in this film.
Seemingly so.
Wow.
William Dafoe is just a big, filthy liar.
I don't believe that.
Tell him to his face because I'm not going to.
Yeah. Samantha Morton also as the Green Woman.
Was she on stilts as well?
Solar, probably on stilts. And then Bryan Cranston with long, flowing hair.
I didn't recognise him for the first few minutes. I was like,
it's
like Cranston. Yeah, that was
Cranston's in this.
Well, Kieran Hines as well, who was in Tinker Tailor. And,
was he?
And James Purfoy as well, who's like one of those classic actors you see in things. And it's like, it's that guy from that
what?
thing.
Yeah.
He was in like Fisherman's Friends, sort of recent feel-good type movie. He was also in a TV series, Rome, as well. And I think he's done a bunch of other British stuff over the years.
He's like, I know exactly who you mean, but couldn't place him. And Nige, I think you're doing the synopsis for this bad boy.
Good God.
Prepare
yourselves, folks.
What is John Carter about?
I feel irony coming out. It's going to be 2 lines. Here we go.
So we open with a street scene and motorbikes there's mice riding these motorbikes. Oh, no, wait, I've got my bike on mice from Mars. No, So no, actually, we open in a time of war. So you look out the window and you're likely to see Confederate and Union soldiers. You're also likely to see Kevin Costner. Oh, look, Dances with Wolves. Or maybe like Beyond the Range, it's Denzel Washington, Matthew Broderick, and Morgan Freeman. Oh,
I don't feel so bad about my long rambling synopses anymore.
Is that Emilio Estevez? Is he Billy the Kid? What's going on? But no, actually, we're here in 1881 and the death of John Carter. The death of John Carpenter. He is a freaky director zombie. No. 1881, the death of John Carter. And then the film ends, the credits roll, and we all go home.
What?
But no, it don't. See, basically, what happens in any film that starts with the death is you get a flashback. So we go straight into a flashback and find out that, in fact, Captain John Carter is a man who served his time in war and wishes to serve no man any longer. Instead, he seeks his own fortune, finding gold up in them there hills. But what he doesn't know, that rather than playing Cowboys versus Aliens, that's a Harrison Ford film, isn't it?
That kind of comes into it a little bit.
Instead of playing Cowboys versus Indians, soon he'll be playing CGI aliens versus what can be best described as the red and blue coloured teams from a table football set who have escaped and are suddenly fighting each other for some incomprehensible reason on Mars. So transported to Mars, John Carter finds he can leap massive distances in a single bound. Perhaps one of these red or blue tribes has an attractive lady he can cozy up to. Maybe he can impress the CGI aliens and find a way back home.
I feel like Nige is showing his hand already.
Or maybe Jimmy McNulty from The Wire and the voice of cinema, Mark Strong, hello, will put paid to those plans. ...
Bravo, one of the most absurd synopses
ever. And if you haven't seen the film, you still haven't seen the film after listening to that.
I did read on like IMDb, and it's like a war-weary former army captain is inexplicably transported to Mars and reluctantly becomes embroiled in a conflict of epic proportions. So
I mean,
there's the simple one.
There's no fun in that.
I quite like the long, slightly mental version.
Yeah, the one where Nige was doing it whilst on crack. So that was.
Let them be crushed. You killed him with one blow. When I saw you, I believed that something new can come into this world.
You, John Carter of Earth?
Yes, ma'am.
So, I guess right at the start of this film, we are open on some rather cringy voiceover and we see Mars. And then we see Dominic West, I think, having some battle with lots of shouting, which you can't really understand, but there's like basically setting up him as the villain. But yeah, we like you said about the kind of flashback, it's interesting. Before he goes to Mars, they said it in, I think he's in Arizona, isn't he, where just before he gets transported.
Yeah, so, it's kind of like Utah. It's sort of, again, it's sort of Texan way. It's the classic sort of Wild West.
So it looks like Mars. So when he's transported to Mars, he still thinks he's on Earth, as it were.
What?
The one weird thing is, I think it actually gets referenced quite a lot later in the film, is he doesn't think he's on Mars, or he doesn't think he still thinks he's on Earth, even though he meets these big green, like whatever the tribe are called.
Like that was my first sort of he's from a time when science fiction wasn't really a thing. They weren't drawing. They're probably there was artists, but you had more traditional artists and painters that were creating etchings or, this, that, and the other. It wasn't like someone going, look at this giant monster I built out of latex, or someone go, look at this concept for it, or look at this comic book. That kind of thing wasn't a thing. So nowadays, if we saw an alien, we'd probably be like, oh my God, like really shocked, but adapt to it rather quickly, assuming it was within our comprehension of what we'd already been kind of exposed to through fantasy and science fiction over the years. With him, this is literally like going to another planet, seeing an alien, and within seconds, he's like, okay, you're an alien. I don't know. I just found that, like, I thought, and also the other thing,
it was unusual, wasn't it? I would say. When
he was just trying to survive, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He's just he just goes into like survival mode. He hides behind a rock. He tries to sort of stake him out and figure out what's going on. Realizes he's outnumbered and kind of has a little interaction.
If I'm a man that just fought in the Civil War, the American Civil War, and I find myself on Mars, and I see a giant like 10-foot, 12-foot tall alien, and I'm hiding behind some rocks, I'm defecating myself, never emerging from those rocks, because I'm like, no bloody way. And the other thing, obviously, it's established as soon as he arrives on Mars, which I thought was good, but then it was one of those moments, kind of one of my biggest criticisms with this film, as I'll get to, is it needed some real editing in it. It didn't need to be this long. And one of the sequences is he realises that because the gravitational pull is different on Mars, he can, he can jump like Superman. Everybody goes, oh, Superman can fly. It's like, no, Superman doesn't fly. He's able to jump above like the gravitational pull of Earth. It's a different kind of thing. So with John Carter, we get that sequence, but it's like, I swear it's like a minute and a half, 2 minutes of him going like, and it's like, yeah, I get it.
Does this weird thing, because to begin with, he's kind of like on the ground, like can't get up, and you're like, oh, this is cool. He's got some weird gravitational thing with Mars. I thought it was like, because he was on Mars, he had a weird gravitational thing. But like you said, it is like Superman was the note I wrote down. It's like he's come from a alien planet. So it's like Superman, he has this kind of power. But one thing I did like right at this point is, which, like you said about the visuals, but the visuals of the alien things, which obviously, like the comparison comes straight away.
The aliens.
The Barks, Star Wars style, but they look, I mean, as in like the actual CG, before going into this film, all I've seen is pretty much the poster. But they look really good. Like the horns and the design and the everything about them. It has that kind of Avatar quality of look.
That's why I think exactly the same thing. But I'm almost like, that's why I don't like it. I just don't. Yeah. And it made me think of like World of Warcraft and films like that, where it's just like when an entire character is just like what can be construed as a CGI blob, coloured blob. It just doesn't quite work for me. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your point, because we've both seen the same thing and thought two completely different things.
No, it's a really valid point. I thought they were done well. Having said that, like straight away, it's like literally like on every note I've made, it's like Star Wars, because I don't. So did this is going back a bit, did the original kind of story and stuff predate Star Wars?
Yeah, 1912.
Yeah, it was 1912.
1912.
It's Princess of Mars, right? Was the original. So Edgar Rice Burroughs. Like, Edgar Rice Burroughs was one of like the first kind of those fantasy pulp writers. Like, I'm trying to think of others like Hal Foster and sci-fi writers like H.P. Lovecraft. All those guys were the ones that shaped the generation of filmmakers and writers in the 70s and 80s. All those guys in the 70s and 80s would probably freely admit, oh yeah, we took all our influence from there. We just did it at a time when pop culture was coming into fruition, and then we were able to capitalize and say, hey, these are our ideas. And then people would go, hang on a second, not that they were taking credit, I'm not saying they were stealing, but like you say, I totally understand, because even if an idea has come up with, say someone had come up with Star Wars in 1912, and then George Lucas makes...
You could argue they already did.
And then George Lucas makes Star Wars in 1977. He still got to the film first, if you know what I mean. He still visually realised it, as it were. Like,
so with Star Wars, that was my next question, I guess. how much influence from John Carter's story. I mean, this is trivia. So go for it.
Yeah, I've got a couple of bits of trivia that sort of directly relate to this. The first is like, to answer your question, Robert Zemeckis was offered to direct John Carter, and he basically said George's already pillaged all of it.
Oh, wow.
With the Star Wars films. In other words, he felt like the best elements of those Mars fantasies had already been borrowed for like the Star Wars space operas. But the film itself, you kind of mentioned, obviously, he got to it first, 1977 did Star Wars. This film holds the record of the longest time in like development.
Oh, I dread to think.
Yeah.
So it's 79 years. Pre-production first started in 1931 when Robert Clappett, director of Looney Tunes, approached the author Edgar Rice Burroughs to make an animated feature out of the first book of the series, A Princess of Mars. Had it gone through, it could have been America's first animated feature, beating Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it didn't leave development hell till 2010, when obviously this film finally started rolling many years later. And I think there was like an 80s version that John McTiernan was sort of rumoured to, with Tom Cruise starring. And there was a guy... Well, there's a bit more trivia on this kind of point, so I'll come to this at the end. But essentially, this is like considered extremely valuable source material. But obviously, to actually get it officially, you'd have had to pay the estate or whoever it was. George Lucas just ripped it off. But I mean, it's a common thing. Like, writers and directors have been ripping off kind of source materials and influences for many years, and you think in modern times as well, it's very difficult to do things that are original.
Well, which is why we get so much IP jumping now.
Exactly, and like Dune as well, you can kind of say, like, I think when we reviewed Dune, a lot of that I was like, well, it's a lot of Star Wars, isn't it? And it's like, well, actually, I think Dune came before, as in the books. But again, maybe Dune ripped off John Carter. Like, this is almost the originator of a lot of this stuff.
The problem is, though, isn't it? I think we come down to the specifics, because if you go back to the original books and works by Edgar Rice Burroughs when he was doing John Carter, or Princess of Mars, I think the original was called, like those kind of books, those pulp things, do you know what I mean? What his visualizations were 60 something years behind before Star Wars. Would those visualizations even been remotely the same if he'd done... Do you know what I mean? If they'd had the technology to make this film back then, when he was making, like, the writing it, conceptualizing it, would he have designed them to look exactly like that? Or would they have operated something differently? The reason we're reminded of Star Wars and all those films is because that... this sounds like a massive tangent, so I'll try and briefly not go down it too far, but that whole CGI thing just will always kind of... a certain aesthetic will always take us back. The desert look, the two suns, the two moons, whatever, will always transport us instantly to those Star Wars films, and especially, dare I say, stuff like The Phantom Menace, like that CGI style. This was only, a decade or so after that? So you've still got those, you know... that said, I still did like the aliens in this film. More so than the humans. More so than the humans. I thought the aliens were better fleshed out.
Same.
Character-wise. I couldn't give a shit about
that's one of
bank manager.
One of my... the two big criticisms, right? Dominic West as the baddie in this film, I don't know if it's the writing or him being cast in it, really doesn't work. And also... your boy Taylor Kitsch lacks so little screen presence in this film, and maybe again it's the writing of that character or the script that he's given, that he's like Etok said, I'm kind of more enjoying the aliens who have a little bit more depth.
The alien story with the father and the daughter and the baddie alien as well, that wanted to, that does usurp his leader's control
of the tribe,
for a time. It was, to me, that was the stuff I was more engaged in. I didn't really care about the war between the red and the blue, as Nige said, the red and the blue tribe of humans, although they were called, what were they called? So this is the thing. One thing I noticed about this movie,
confusing, isn't it?
Right, so they're called overpaid actors.
They're not.
Nigel. So
they're not humans.
Right, get this.
They're humans.
Tharks are the aliens. The princess, her surname was Thoris. The baddie, Dominic West, was Than, or something Than. Son Than. the Earthlings were referred to as, like Mark Strong, were the Therns. So you had the Tharks, the Thoris, the Than, and the Therns. It's like
that's really confusing.
That's not a joke either. That's actually the film.
It was. I think that's where I struggled. Like at the start, was that first scene when there's like a big battle.
Yeah,
it's like red against blue. What the fuck's going on? Suddenly, a guy comes out of nowhere and starts shooting this blue gun, and people start disappearing. Yes. And it's just like, what on earth is going on? And I agree with Smith about Dominic West like being badly cast in this. Obviously, he was very hot off the back of
the bank advert,
The Wire, which suited his the bank advert, which suited his talents like remarkably. But I don't think there's anything else I've seen him in.
No,
I almost feel the same about like Clive Owen's an example where he can be perfect in certain roles, but other roles he just looks incredibly wooden. I mean, we spoke about Keanu Reeves for this kind of thing, there he's only kind of suited towards certain roles. So you would think that it would work as like this some big domineering general, but it just seems so weird and just.
The funny thing is, like, I don't know enough about Dominic West as an actor. Like, I haven't seen like The Wire, and like I haven't seen his body of work. But he strikes me as like the perfect actor for this kind of movie, like a villain, like a ham it up actor. But there's something I found it like it just felt a bit too. I don't know. There's something missing.
It really doesn't work. Like you don't feel like.
Oddly, I liked her. I liked her.
Yeah, she
the
was
princess.
Really good.
I thought she's really good. Like I like the fact. I know it sounds like a bloody box ticking exercise. I like the fact they made her more than the Princess of Mars, as in she was this badass. Like
she was badass.
The first interaction her and John Carter I thought was really cute, where John Carter says, "Get behind me," kind of thing. He grabs her sword, and the next thing she grabs his. So he kills her a few. She grabs the sword back off him, slays all these aliens or these other humans. And then. It was a really good little touch. She wipes the blood of the thing a lot across his loincloth, and I was like, oh, saucy. But I was like...
Doesn't he say, maybe I should stand behind you?
Yeah, he says, like maybe he goes, stand behind me, and then she goes, maybe I should stand behind you. And then there's a callback to that later in the film. So I really liked her. I would agree with Smith. The weird thing is, John Carter, I'm going to guess, is in a lot of this movie. But it's not like he has a presence in this movie, because everyone he's opposite, the aliens... and the princess have so much more screen presence and believability. I want to like this guy as the lead. I really want to like Taylor Kitsch.
It almost feels like, I don't know, George of the Jungle or something. It's kind of like... It's just like... I know that obviously Brendan Fraser's, a great in I don't know, The Whale and stuff, but
and George of the Jungle.
And George of the Jungle.
At the cinema when I was.
You saw that at the cinema?
I saw that at the cinema as well.
George of the Jungle. Watch out for that tree.
Or Tarzan or something. It's just like.
Well, I mean, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Here we go.
Yeah, basically, you're just saying he's got long hair. I think that's very unfair. I completely disagree. I think he.
Do you think he's good in this?
Yeah, I think he's really good. I think he brings a lot of presence to it. I get why people don't like him, and I think I've probably got rose-tinted glasses on because immediately I'm looking at him and saying, "Oh, it's Tim Riggins from Friday Night Lights," and like, "Oh, he's an iconic character." And from the very first scene, I'm invested in him because I'm like, "Oh, it's that actor." It's like when people go and watch like a Tom Cruise film or whatever film, and the actor brings enough presence to it that it doesn't matter so much. But I do think he actually comes across quite well, and I do think that the humans in this film, they definitely struggle from quality writing, things to do. Like even Mark Strong shows up occasionally as like this all-powerful kind of guy, and it's like, what's he actually doing?
He's like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers.
It's very weird.
I did
like all her family and stuff. There's like they just don't get much to do. And that makes it challenging.
I think the dialogue is written it's really clunky, isn't it? A lot of the dialogue. So yeah,
I understand where Nige's coming
give them
from.
A chance.
I understand where Nige's come from. He's definitely going to be seeing this through rose-tinted glasses and going, "Oh, that's the guy that played, was it Christopher Biggins in Christopher Biggins in that TV show." And but the humans.
For me though, he because he isn't anyone to me, and maybe. That's the thing. Like I'm not watching Tom Cruise. I'm just watching some bloke.
You're not watching Tom Cruise at the Olympic closing ceremony.
George of the Jungle run around Mars.
But I did like Mark. So Mark Strong turns up in the film. You obviously know he's this I can't say it.
He's like a shape-shifting.
He's an omnipotent presence that, and he can. He's got the ability to do this, do that, and grant great powers. to whomsoever he feels should have them. And then there's the reveal in the film later on that he's sort of like what we would call in the realm of He-Man and She-Ra, like a cosmic enforcer. He's there to maintain a balance to a degree of good versus evil, but also he does this. There's this wonderful little bit of exposition where they're all fighting. Oh no, they're not fighting. There's a wedding going on between the princess and Dominic West's character. What was his name? Yeah. Sab Tharn. So Sab Tharn and Deja Thoris, they're going to get married. And they're looking at it.
Yeah,
John Carter.
That's when he has his Charles Dickens Ebenezer Scrooge moment where he can't do anything, but he's just watching the. Oh
yeah, he's like so that's a good point, Smith. Actually, I didn't think of that, but yeah, he's almost like muted by the power of Mark Strong. Mark Strong's acting ability causes everyone else to be muted. But he says that there's a really great line or a great piece of dialogue. He says something along the lines of, everywhere is the same. A planet is created. People inhabit it. Then what is it like? Societies are formed, and then they fight. Then there's a war, and then the very planet they exist upon is neglected. And it's like, oh yeah, that's very true of every kind of. I'm sure planets across the galaxy and universe they all end up being destroyed because they're the very thing that is neglected because people value themselves more than the land they're on, kind of thing. And so it's his role is just to go from planet to planet and oversee the eventual destruction by seeing that one arm is it's a whole thing. But yeah, it was the speedy dog as well. We haven't mentioned Speedy Dog yet, the big dog thing.
Yeah, it becomes like his best mate, his companion. Yeah,
Wampa.
Again, it's just weird, that kind of stuff. It's like it's trying to tick too many boxes. It's trying to be like, let's like a Jar Jar Binks type thing. Let's introduce someone that's like a little bit comedy, maybe for the kids. And I know this film suffered majorly from just disjointed marketing, for instance, and I feel like the film itself struggles from just trying to do too much, like action sequences, like comedy moments, like where you said he was learning to walk and jump and everything else like that. The romance that doesn't really develop beyond, it kind of develops without there being much sort of focus on that story. And like the good guys, bad guys, the families, all that stuff. There's just a lot in this film that isn't necessarily that easy to follow. It sounds like a review.
Well,
we're heading there.
The one moment I did like when you say about action sequences, and one of you or both of you might hate this, I actually really like. There's a scene where he has this ridiculous, almost like 300.
That's a great. I did enjoy that,
and it's absurd. Actually really well. It's absurd, but it's beautifully cinematic, shot, and it's intercut with his. You realise basically his wife and daughter have died, so it's intercut with that. So all of a sudden, we've suddenly got this backstory that we've been missing throughout the whole of the film of where this guy's come from or anything. So we suddenly get that.
That was a great moment. I really like I know it's a predictable thing, and we kind of knew it was going to happen at some point. But I really enjoyed the gladiatorial arena battle. I did. It was silly
with the two
giant monkey things. Oh, that was really cute.
And it was weird. Like in Burroughs, like Tarzan books, he was called like the Great White Ape, wasn't he? Tarzan was referred to, and then we had literal Great White Apes fighting. Yeah. Which is quite.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, because earlier in the film they refer to white apes, don't they? And it's just like, that's. Yeah, then like you say, the great white apes show up. But yeah, it's nice reference, Nige.
Why, thank you.
I think some of the set pieces are done well, but you're right. Like sometimes it does feel quite disjointed. This film, I think
disjointed, and this film could have done with editing down massively.
Yeah, the whole setup was like confusing. I didn't mind parts of this where he kind of got to Mars and he's kind of captured by the alien things and stuff like that. And the love thing was predictable, I guess, but fine.
It was alright.
It was nothing to really remember about it. It was just like, it was so obvious and so just like, they're not even going to try with this. It's just there, kind of thing.
I did like the kind of, I guess it was like the semi-reveal. Well, no, it's not semi-reveal. It's basically when they go to this kind of sacred temple area and he finds out, or finds out, discovers.
They climb the walls and start looking at like the inscriptions.
But there's that bit when they're on that weird like thing that's like a tree thing, and it's like it's all forming under them, and they find out. I think it's that bit where they find out that he is basically on Mars, but his body is on Earth. So there's this whole kind of dual existence thing. Basically, if he was to be killed on Earth, if his body was to be, I think, damaged or something, then he would cease to exist on Mars. So, I thought that was like a nice little thing rather than him just immediately appearing on Mars. But at the same time, I think we didn't. I understand why it's there, and it makes all the sense in the world. I almost feel like I'd rather this film didn't have the flashback. I understand that it bookends the movie and it kind of tells that story, but really all it does is explain that his body's not here. Here's how. Here's what's happening.
It's almost like a flash forward.
Yeah, and then
flashback.
Sorry, yeah, but then like the flash, the present to the flashback to the present again. And the end of the movie, I think, is only there because they're kind of. I know it's going to sound pretty obvious what I'm saying, but I think the end of the movie is there because they're trying to set up the sequel of like, don't worry, folks. I know that sounds obvious, but what I mean is like, don't worry, folks. His body is going to be in the temple. He's going to be. Whereas I think they could have just started off the film with him as in the American Civil War or post Civil War, him going to finding himself on Mars, and then. That's the story, and then you can. I don't know. I just felt the whole thing with the book ending of the movie. I understood why it was there, and I appreciate why it's there. But I think again, it's a chunk of this movie that I think you could just edit out. Like I don't
see. I kind of disagree. I didn't particularly like the way they kind of introduced it. I thought some of it was a bit hackneyed and convoluted and didn't really work, but. The ending, it kind of worked for me, and it turned out that his nephew was actually the author of the book. So his nephew, I think Ned, is actually Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Well, I mean, like you say at the start of the movie, I think he says like Edgar Rice Burroughs at the start of the movie, and I was like, oh right, okay, it's Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah.
So
maybe that's just him being very much like, I'm going to write a book about me, ha ha. But yeah, like I kind of thought it did create quite a nice bookend. Okay. I think if it had just been like, oh, I've lived happily ever after, and they obviously needed a way to send him back and explain how he could come back again and stuff like that. I didn't think that was that bad.
Okay.
But again, like it was, I just feel like the whole film was overly complex in some bits.
Definitely, yeah.
And really dumb in others. So it struggled to find that middle ground. And I think the director himself, obviously we've kind of mentioned the fact his background was like Pixar movies, animation. He said when he actually got the director's position, he said to Disney, I'm not going to get it right first time. I've got to tell you that.
Wow.
And then he said afterwards that he wasn't satisfied with how the movie turned out and confessed that a lot of the problems came from doing a first time live action director and being drunk with power after just getting too much money, too much creative control.
Oh, wow.
And he actually went back and did a bunch of reshoots afterwards, not necessarily because the film needed it, although obviously people might think it certainly did, but because they could just do it so easily for an animated film. It's like, oh, this bit doesn't work. All right, we'll just animate an extra bit, do some more lines, chuck it in. It's not one of those things that's going to cost you millions upon millions. Obviously, with a live action film, when you've got these giant sets, you've got these actors that are worth an absolute fortune, CGI, etc., it cost. And as we've seen already, this film cost a lot and for whatever reason didn't land.
Have you got some more trivia while you're there?
Yeah, I've got a bit of trivia. So when they're actually filming this, so I mentioned it was like Texas, Utah. The crew, as they were kind of setting up, discovered a 60-foot-long sauropod dinosaur skeleton.
Oh, wow.
And were like, oh, wow. And then the state's Land Management Bureau took over. So there you go. Probably the oldest cast member of the film. But thank you. So it's just kind of less trivia, more like a little story. So settle in. It's generally believed that inadequate marketing in the film was the main factor for its commercial failure. Like I've already mentioned, the director was given like full creative control, but was also given control over the marketing campaign. And he really like overestimated the appeal and popularity of John Carter. So he was the one who actually lobbied Walt Disney to go to Burroughs' family and basically say, you've got to buy this film, go to the estate. I've read the book since I was a kid, really pitched it as like Indiana Jones on Mars. And there was a lot of people within the industry who were also like really confident this was going to be huge. Like Jon Favreau, when he learned that the film was being made, he gave him a call, congratulated him, requested, can I be a Thark's voice? And he voices like the Thark bookie in the film.
Does he?
David Schwimmer as well is one of the voices, because it's something he was really familiar with and absolutely loved. The should have been star of Men in Black, if you've been reading the news recently.
No.
Did you guys not hear that David Schwimmer was apparently offered the role that Will Smith took in Men in Black?
Really?
Turned it down to direct a film instead and said he would have been a megastar like Will Smith he'd have taken. But anyway,
that's
back to John Carter.
That's weird.
So basically, he overestimated like the appeal. He was inexperienced with live action movies. When he did the first like teaser trailer, because it was such an overly complex CGI heavy film, there weren't any special effects sort of shots available, so straight away the trailer's not going to have that really big exciting moment. He didn't mention any of his like previous work as a Pixar director because he didn't want people to think it was a children's film.
Yeah, I get that.
And he wanted to stay as like true to the source material as possible and avoid it as like an action film or a blockbuster, even though studio executives are like, to make money you've got to do it like this. And then when the teaser came out and everyone was like, what's this? Don't even know what this is. He like vetoed a bunch of shots. They were trying to use like Led Zeppelin's Kashmir as part of it, and he said, oh no one likes Led Zeppelin, like a 70s band, we'll get a new band to do a modern interpretation of it, and just all this like crazy stuff that they did. But eventually they actually did sort the trailers out, they got people in to do it properly, and it actually did a lot better overseas, and bizarrely in Russia of all places.
Wow.
And it was actually quite a successful film there, but it's sort of strongly felt. And like the name of the film changed so many times, because originally it was Princess of Mars, then they were going to call it John Carter of Mars, and then they just called it John Carter. And again,
even that doesn't work, does it? Because
no, it definitely doesn't. And it's just like, what does that even mean? It's just a random name. But then like Indiana Jones is just a name, but you add like Temple of Doom to it, and it sparks up. You add Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Also, no offense to John's, but Indiana Jones. That's a great name. Like that's like, what is it? That's a great name that leaps from the thing. John Carter. It's like, that's that bloke who works in the local Quiznos, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the local what?
Quiznos.
There's a reference.
There you go, sir.
But yeah, obviously, like as I mentioned, the film was like a sort of total disaster in that sense, and it didn't actually come that long after The Lone Ranger as well, which was another thing that like Disney hung their hat on with Johnny Depp, really kind of well known. But again, it was something from, I can't remember when The Lone Ranger was out. Was it like the 50s or 60s on TV? It kind of lost that like mass appeal. Like even I remember when Zorro came out, for instance, it was at the time where it wasn't that long after people knew what Zorro was, and it kind of stood on its own 2 feet. It's like, a guy in a mask with a sword, that's interesting. Like random Confederate soldier suddenly on Mars is just weird. And likewise, I touched upon it ever so briefly with a misspeak, but there was Cowboys versus Aliens, a film
I saw that at the cinema
that came out, and that was dreadful, like really bad.
Awful.
So there is anything that's kind of done with Cowboys and Aliens is very unusual. Anyway, I've rambled on for a bit, but there's a couple last little bits of trivia. One is, you said John Carter's not a cool name. It's actually Charlton Heston's real name. So, again, don't say that's Charlton Heston. I'll give you a bop on the nose.
Charlton Heston would have been better for this film.
When they first tried to make it, he'd have been actually too young to do it. So that shows how long this film took to get made. There's a hidden Mickey in the film. There's a couple, actually. I don't know if you saw one of them, but on the wedding, one of Deja's red tattoos on her right arm, so one of the aliens, it's plainly visible before she takes... No, is Deja...
That's just the princess.
She's the princess,
yes. One of her tattoos, she's got a Mickey. Just for the wedding, she takes his hand, she's about to drink from a cup of water, and you can clearly see Mickey Mouse.
Wow.
Which was pretty sneaky. And then another one of the films, I did mention there's a few people that tried to make this. In the 1950s, the stop-motion animation effects director, Harryhausen, was interested in doing it. He did the visual effects for things like Jason the Argonauts, Clash of the Titans, that like classic skeleton stop-motion style, which could have been really interesting, but again, would have been a very different film. And then the last one, the events of the movie bear little resemblance to the book. Makes no mention of the immortal manipulators at all. Those things are completely concocted by modern minds. The stories divert after he's taken captive by the Tarks quite early in the film.
Oh, right. Wow.
So in the book, some 10 years after Carter's arrival on Mars, a great machine that generated oxygen for the planet has been shut down, and Carter uses a sequence of thought waves to open the doors to the facility. I wonder why they changed this. As an engineer begins to enter, Carter passes out from asphyxiation and dies. At that moment, he awakens in the cave in Arizona. The end of the movie takes place at the tomb, with Carter departing for Mars. This coincides with the beginning of the second Carter novel, The God of Mars. And again, it's like, I don't think that would necessarily have worked in a modern film, that the hero dies at the end in that kind of way. I know, like, obviously the way it's done in this one, he kind of does, but it's a bit more, I don't know, ambiguous in that sense. But anyway, there's a bunch of random John Carter trivia.
I was thinking, you were talking about, like, just pulp films earlier, and I suddenly I made a note of it, but you think this shares a lot of kind of similarity. I mean, it's the fish out of water, as we love saying on this podcast.
Well, it is, yeah.
But it reminds me in some ways, for obvious reasons, to Flash Gordon, right? So I talked about, but I mean, in terms of, obviously I mentioned earlier about those kind of the comic strip kind of characters of yesteryear, with the how Prince Valiant, Flash Gordon, John Carter, etc. But you think that the Flash Gordon movie in the 1980s, it embraced its kind of, I don't want to say silliness, but it's pulpish roots, right? It looked at Flash Gordon and said, here's a guy that's from Earth that finds himself on Mongo, fighting Mig the Merciless, and it's such a, like, Flash Gordon, like, not that we've reviewed it yet or we have any plans to in the near future, but it's such a fun movie and it's unapologetic of what it is. You think that this movie could have been that in a way, like John Carter could have embraced its pulpy roots, and even Nige just then, it kind of distances itself from its origins as, here's John Carter, and it's almost like what we're getting more and more of now with the IP claim jumping, where it's like someone goes, hey, here's an IP, let's use this, let's turn it into our vision of what this should be. It's like, well, then why even, I understand why you did.
But people hated Flash Gordon when it came out as well, didn't they?
Oh yeah, I'm not denying.
I know it's like cult now.
Oh, absolutely.
There's loads of people who absolutely love it, but in terms of like successful film.
I mean, in some ways though, this does have this cult status though, right? Despite,
does it?
Well, I think.
Does it? No, you say all your mates like it, so maybe
no,
it does,
like,
right?
I just know a few, well, more than a few people that like this movie, but that's because they like that fantasy genre of entertainment, like Masters of the Universe and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's I can't imagine this has the same kind of cult broad following that Flash Gordon has, where you could probably show
not that
Flash. I was going to say Flash Gordon at the Prince Charles Cinema in London. That's going to be a packed house. John Carter in the.
I don't know. I just wonder if it might though in time. You know, give it like.
Maybe in time.
I'm not saying it should, but
this is the thing. Like, this is leading into my review, I guess, to a degree. I don't think it's as unapologetically fun as what the reason Flash Gordon is a cult classic, and a lot of those films that do become cult classics are, especially when they were derided at the time, is because they embrace the silliness, they embrace the absurdity of it. Flash Gordon on Mongo playing American football with a bunch of aliens in Ming the Merciless throne room, that's absurd, but we love it. It's just like, oh, this is so much fun. This movie, I think, it's going to be, and I understand why they did, but it takes itself, I think, a little too seriously.
Before we kind of get, I guess, into our reviews, obviously Andrew recommended this.
Oh, yes.
Have you got like what he thought of this?
Yes. Okay, Andrew. Whoa, I've just seen the rating at the bottom. So yeah.
Rating.
We don't agree. So this is Andrew Harwood Mills. Take over. I first heard of John Carter of Mars when my agent. Hang on a second, Andrew. Are you dropping?
Nice plug.
This is already good. This is very good. When my agent sent me to meet with the director to audition for it.
What?
Andrew, the director was a really nice guy. However, the only memory I have was when he awkwardly attempted to make a joke about the fact that we both have the same first name. I probably should have tried to laugh louder, as he didn't offer me the role. The starring role, Andrew. Oh, imagine if you'd had the starring role. Andrew Howard Mills is John Carter. Andrew, you need to
do better than Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Next time, Andrew, tell us who you were auditioning for. This is fascinating. The next thing I heard about the film was listening to Roast Google podcast. That's a former He-Man podcast. I believe Eamon O'Donoghue, another He-Man fan, had just seen it and thought, if Masters of the Universe ever made a live-action movie, doing something similar to John Carter would be a good idea. I totally agree. I get that, actually. I understand where he's coming from there. I finally watched the film myself at the beginning of 2024. So, oh wow, he's a recent viewing of this. So he auditioned for it, but didn't actually see it for another...
Wow. The pain was too much.
I'm not
jump straight in.
Do you know what? I wouldn't be surprised at that. If you don't get a film, you're like, I'll avoid that.
Well, most people who are in films don't then go and watch it anyway.
Johnny Depp, infamously or famously, never watches his films, rarely. I finally watched the film myself at the beginning of 2024 and absolutely loved it. The characters, the relationships, the colours, the direction, the script, all excellent. I loved it from beginning to end. It made me feel like I was a kid watching one of the great movies from the 80s or 90s. I wish they would make more films like this. Wow. 9.5 out of 10.
Oh, wow. He has not left much wiggle room for improvements.
So 9.5 out of 10, blimey. Right, where do we sit? Who wants to kick this one off?
Nige,
do you want to go?
Sure. Okay. This film didn't actually do as badly as people recognise in the box office, So it did cost... The production cost was 263 million, which is obviously a lot. It ballooned because of the marketing cost to about 350. Actually made 284 back. So didn't that's still 70 million. That's a lot, don't get me wrong. But it's not like it cost 100 million to make and made £3.50. A lot of people went and watched this film. A lot of people like this film. Well, maybe they liked it, maybe they just went and watched it. Anyway, me personally, I like Taylor Kitsch. I think he does well in this film. I think the acting in this film is mixed, but as you mentioned, the kind of story by the aliens is good. William Dafoe's really good in it. Samantha Morton's really good in it, albeit I kind of get lost a little bit by the fact they're big sort of green blobs. I think the dog's stupid. I think some of the subplots all over the place. I think Mark Strong always brings a bit of gravitas to the role, but it doesn't really work. That being said, I still quite enjoyed it. I don't think it's a terrible film by any stretch of the imagination. I think you kind of commented on yourself, a little bit of editing, it'd be a little bit tighter, it'd be a little bit better. Because I don't have a problem with the lead, it's never going to be as bad possibly as what you guys give it. But for me, it's not a great film by any stretch of the imagination. It's probably a little bit too long. It isn't that easy to get into, and I think that's part of the reason I watched it for half an hour, went away and didn't come back to it until you guys forced me at gunpoint to watch it for this. So that all sort of jumbled up together. I'm actually going to give this a 6 out of 10 because it's fine. It's probably not a film I'll go back and rewatch. It's not a film I necessarily recommend. But if you went to a cabin in the middle of the woods and there was literally one DVD there and it was John Carter, you might as well watch it. So there you go.
Nice. Fair enough. Ito, what did you think?
Yeah, so I think my biggest criticism with this movie is probably the length of it. I think you could cut out a lot of it. Not a lot of it, but you could have definitely got this down to an hour 45 easily, an hour and a half easily.
What is it? I can't actually remember how long it is.
It's 2 hours and 12.
2.25 hours.
Yeah.
2.25 hours. So I think it's unnecessarily long. I think, I think we've kind of covered my review to a degree. I like the story of the aliens more than the story of the warring humanoid factions. I don't think John Carter is a great screen presence. The pacing of the film seems a bit up and down. That said, I was engaged throughout. I wouldn't say I got bored. I was just sort of I was invested in it, even though at times I was just this isn't great. But it's like Nige kind of said, it's not, I don't think it's nearly as bad as some people have made out. I think the film, and this is more of a kind of a broad criticism, as in something it would find hard to nail down. I think it takes itself a little bit too seriously. I think it needed a bit more of that. Like I say, it needed to kind of honour its roots a little more, like that, those kind of pulpy roots, and just celebrate the absurdity of man in loincloth on Mars. And don't get me wrong, there are funny moments in the film, like everyone calling him Virginia, because he says I'm from Virginia, and they think that's his name. So everyone's like chanting Virginia for quite a while, which was amusing. But
the way you've really told that story, it does sound hilarious.
It was good. I enjoyed that. Virginia and the dog that Nige hated. I wasn't too keen on it either, but
Turdo, I think its name is.
I think it's like Wadu or Wadlow or
Wally.
I don't know, something. Wally. Yeah, there you go. So I'm gonna give this. Let's give us a nice, easy 5 out of 10. Yeah, I'm happy with that. 5 out of 10.
Fair enough. It's really interesting because when I saw, literally, like, I knew a lot more, not littler, a lot less even than you guys about this film. I knew nothing about the origin story. I knew nothing about anything about it. So all I saw really was the kind of the poster and the DVD case, which I thought was...
Smith bought it on DVD. Star Wars for a new generation, says the tagline.
No, it doesn't. Does it really?
It really does, yeah. It's probably back to front, but yeah.
No. Oh my God, it does. That's amazing.
But when you look at that, I thought, oh my God, this looks utterly dreadful, just from the marketing, like you said. So to begin with, I was actually surprised that it was better than I thought. One thing we haven't talked about, I thought the score was outstanding.
Oh, yeah, actually, that's a very good point.
The music
was really good.
Was, like a 10 out of 10 for the music. It's grandiose and cinematic and everything you want from that kind of film. Yep. I enjoyed the kind of world building. I thought the visuals are brilliant throughout. It's imaginative. I like when they go into that big, weird... place near the river, and it's all it's all like electrical and stuff. I thought that was done really well. It's funny actually. Unlike Nige, I quite liked the alien people and the design of them and all of that. Less so about the humans. And I know you're a big Taylor fan, but yeah, I wasn't on board with him. I thought, I think generally speaking, it had huge plot holes, bad script, especially dialogue. Poor casting and very little development of your human characters. I put in my notes.
What have you done?
Sorry, human characters.
Yeah, he has the screen presence of a glass of water.
What?
So harsh.
Well, yeah, but saying all that, like I said, like I actually enjoyed it.
Can I just say something? If you made a film called Glass of Water. And the star was a glass of water, that would have the best screen presence ever.
Well, yeah, okay.
So, so your argument needs to have context.
Isn't that Signs?
Yeah, there you go.
Swing away a bubble. I can't remember what his name is.
Yeah. Saying that, I kind of enjoyed it despite me thinking it was going to be terrible. I actually kind of enjoyed it, like both of you, but I'm probably... not quite a 5, not quite a 6, so I'm going to give it a point. I'm going to go 5.5 out of 10 on this one. But I'm kind of similar for different reasons. And guys, what do you think of John Carter
from Mars?
From Mars or Earth or Bassoon or wherever he ends up next? Get in touch. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us. X us at Off-Radar Podcast and let us know what you think. I have to.
No.
Everyone knows what Twitter is.
If we didn't actually get views from it, I would go off Twitter just because of Elon Musk. But anyway,
yeah, you and me both. Like I need
such
Twitter as a social
horrible
media platform
person. Anyway, get in touch. Let us know what you think about Elon Musk. We need your help. We are looking to grow Off-Radar and release more and more high-quality content. Please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your pod. And why not share with your friends and loved ones?
Help me help you.